speakers here today, we're going to have the chance to dive into learning about working toward a braver way. Braver Angels is the nation's largest cross-partisan, volunteer-led movement to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. Hey, buddy, I'm talking. The mission of Braver Angels is to help individuals and communities come together across often bitter divides to engage in courageous citizenship, which can pave the way for meaningful and collaborative change. At our forum today, we're going to share updates on the recent activities of the Northern Minnesota and Wisconsin Braver Angels Alliance and ways to get involved. And without further ado, please give a warm round of applause to Heidi and Mary.
Good morning. How do I Here we are. Hi, it's nice to see all of you. I know, like most of you, I'm Heidi Levine. I am a member of this congregation. I'll let Mary introduce herself, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we got involved and dive in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm Mary Adams. I go to Peace Church. I know our churches work together quite a bit, collaborate. Yeah, I've been interested in and concerned about polarization long before Braver Angels came on the scene. So it was really exciting when I became aware of them and enjoy working on changing this culture of polarization. So
thanks. And I became aware of Braver Angels early in its inception back in 2016 when I was working in higher education and doing campus dialogue work. And so was excited to see a national organization forming that was doing dialogue adjacent work. And after moving to Duluth a year and a half ago, reached out to the leaders of our local alliance and have been enjoying getting involved with their work. So we'd like to hear just like a minute or two, like, why are you here this morning? I mean, maybe it's because the forum on Sunday morning is a part of what you do, but beyond that, what made you decide to be here an hour before the service? So interested in cross-partisanship. Any other reason? Yeah. I was gonna repeat, but yeah.
We First Universalist Church in Minneapolis for many years, and Bill Doherty is one of the founders of Braver Angels, as far as I know. So, and also we are the Forums Committee.
One other?
Looking for solutions wherever we can find them.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that echoes a lot of what bring Mary and I to Braver Angels. And we are very aware of the intensifying polarization in at least our country, if not around the world, around political issues. I found this quote in just this past week's New York Times to be pretty timely and on point. And this was in an op-ed piece by Peter Baker. And he said that more than at any time in years, Americans view one another through the lens of politics and tribal differences, led by a president who encourages that rather than trying to heal the divisions. Americans are so angry that many no longer want to associate with people who disagree with them. Back in 1960, pollsters asked Americans if it would bother them to have their son or daughter marry someone from the other party. Only about 5% said yes. By 2024, that had risen to 38% of Republicans and 45% of Democrats. And another recent poll asked about whether people perceive members of the other party as being immoral. And 72% of Republicans and 64% of Democrats viewed the other party as immoral. So all of this just supports the sense that we are becoming increasingly polarized and having increasing trouble working across divides, which is affecting us in our relationships with our friends and our families. At the government level, we see it in the increasing log jams and difficulty or inability getting things done when we are not willing to work in a cross-partisan way. I also want to say that it is a really challenging and delicate balance, especially when we feel strongly about an issue. So I know for me, one of the challenges in being involved with Braver Angels is I'm frequently needing to think very intentionally and check myself about how do I stay open to hearing what other people think and how they see the world, why they think the way they do, and still stay centered in what I value and what's important to me. And I need to remember that being willing to listen doesn't mean that I am letting go of what I think is important. It just means that I'm trying to stay open. And I think that some of the folks from Braver Angels can do a really good job explaining how this work matters and what it looks like. So we're going to, yes, yay. All right. So the Braver Way is a set of principles that guides all of the work that Braver Angels does. I'm going to really quickly read through this list. And I invite you, as I share these principles, to think about, so which ones of these do you think, oh yeah, I do that, or I could do that pretty easily, but I especially invite you to lean into thinking about which one of those would actually be hard for me, at least at times. So all Braver Angels events operate with these principles in mind, that we state our views freely and fully without fear. We treat people who disagree with us with honesty, dignity, and respect. We welcome opportunities to engage with those with whom we disagree. We believe that all of us have blind spots and that none of us are not worth talking to. We seek to disagree accurately, avoiding exaggeration and stereotypes. We look for common ground where it exists, and if possible, find ways to work together. We believe that in disagreements, both sides share and learn. And finally, in Braver Angels, neither side is teaching the other or giving feedback on how to think or say things differently. So again, these are the principles that guide Braver Angels' work. And those principles are baked into everything that Braver Angels does and the way that it operates. So there are national programs that take place, and there are also local alliances like the Northern Minnesota-Wisconsin Alliance that Mary and I are members of. And all of Braver Angels programs, alliances are structured in a way that they are co-led by somebody who identifies as leaning red and somebody who identifies as leaning blue. And that's integral to how we do the work, that we are partners in coming together, addressing whatever issues are up for discussion at that point. And that work is done through things like workshops. The Red Blue workshop was, I think, the first one that Braver Angels did, and it was intended to bring people together to hear from each other about how they see things when they're, and yeah, how they approach things based on or connected to how they affiliate politically. There's the Disagreeing Better workshop, so to help us develop the skills and capacity to work through conflicts with each other, and Common Ground workshops that are designed to help us work together across divides to come up with solutions to problems that we share. Braver Angels debates are really fascinating, and they are different than how we normally think of debates. The intention of a Braver Angels debate is not to declare a winner or a loser. The intention of Braver Angels debates is to take a usually contentious topic and create a space where people can share and hear their different perspectives about that. And two examples, nationally, there was recently a debate on immigration that was done by Zoom, so it was open to people from across the country. More locally, back in the fall, we partnered with UMD to do a debate on the First Amendment and whether there should be limits on First Amendment rights on a college campus. As a former higher education administrator, it was fascinating. We do outreach to local leaders. So in Minnesota, we have worked with our legislature to help them develop the ability to work in a cross-partisan way. One thing that you might want to look into is the Talking Sense partnership that was developed between Minnesota Public Radio and Braver Angels that is helping people, again, be able to think about how do I communicate more effectively with people who see the world differently than I do. Locally, we have done a lot of outreach to city council and regional leaders and some of the organizations in the Duluth area who have been organizing to address concerns such as the presence of ICE, immigration, land usage in the area. And then finally, one of the places where ultimately this should all lead is to the development of citizen-led solutions for tackling problems. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mary to both pick up anything I missed and also to dive more into that.
So, yeah, the citizen-led solutions is something I'm most excited about. The idea is that, Braver Angels has been working at this, lowering the temperature and getting conversations across political divides. With our new CEO, they've been thinking, maybe what we need to do is think about that really what has happened is we've got a culture now of polarization. So problems aren't addressed in a collaborative way anymore. Not in that hasn't been done in the legislature for decades, right? I mean, that's my feeling anyway, that they've struggled to create collaborative solutions. And now we're at the point where, whoever happens to have the majority in Congress creates their laws, and then the next time that they're not in power, the next group comes in and changes all of them. This is not democracy. And so how do we shift the culture? And they're thinking that the way to do that is to start locally. So take smaller problems, local problems, and develop collaborative solutions to those problems. Hence the citizen-led solutions. So there's a little graphic that they've designed. And so the first thing we need to do if we want to do this here in Duluth is to get foster relationships amongst organizations and so on that represent the folks that are related to a particular problem. One of the things I'm thinking about is the school district has this $4 million deficit that they're trying to deal with. Could we pull together all the various folks that want to weigh in on this particular issue and then do the likes of if you see this, can I point?
You can point, but nobody's going to see it.
Yeah, all right.
Oh,
So,
yep.
I'll just do that. Handy, is after you get these relationships, then to put on the likes of a common ground workshop, which Heidi talked a little bit about. It's a wonderful structure that Bill Doherty and others, leaders in Braver Angels put together to get at, for the starting point to not be, well, what do you think we should do about this problem? But more, how did you get to where you think we ought to do about this problem? So we come to appreciate each other as fellow citizens and human beings with fears and concerns and values. And you start to realize when you do that, that your values and concerns may be very similar, but you have different ideas about how to meet those concerns, so that there's this groundwork laid of respect that then allows you to move toward discussing possible solutions and finding solutions that you can all rally around. Hence the collaborative nature, and then taking those solutions and bringing them to the, your civic leaders, the city council, school board, and so on. So yeah, we wanted to take a little extra time to focus on that. If anybody interested in getting on board with that, I'd love to hear from you, because I'd like to kind of get moving in Duluth to try to begin to change the culture right here where we live, in terms of solving problems. So moving on to, which brings me to what our local alliance is working on and what we'd like to invite you folks. Our goal here is to help people develop themselves individually in their personal lives, to have relationships. We understand that some families really have difficulty talking to other family members because you have different political views. So to help people just in these very personal ways enrich their lives in being able to talk to folks with other political views, but also to build the capacity to do more in our own community with putting on workshops, debates. The one-to-one conversations are, if you go to the Braver Angels website, you can easily connect to being able to do one-to-one conversations over Zoom with people, might be across the country. They've developed structures for you to follow up particular questions, and a very structured way to have these conversations. So you each get certain amounts of time to talk and share with each other, but they cover one-to-one conversation will cover like urban and rural divide. So you will, if you live in a rural area, you could arrange to visit with somebody from an urban area to discuss your points of view. You could meet with someone of a different race. There's a whole nother set of questions designed to bring people of different races together, and so on. And then like I said earlier, we'd like to build a capacity to do some collaborative problem solving right here in Duluth. And we would love to have people that are interested help you get connected to being trained as a moderator or a debate chair. Right now, when we put on the, I think we may have, Laura, do we have one debate chair here in Duluth? Is he, Amber's not? But the fellow does he come from, I think he's from near here.
Somewhere in Wisconsin.
Yeah, but we don't have any folks trained to moderate workshops that live in the area. They come up from the cities, which is part of the problem. One of the things I want to talk about, they did a common ground workshop on mining up in Ely, but they ended up cutting it short. It's supposed to be a 5-hour workshop. They did 3 hours, and I think some of that is that they brought the moderators were from the cities, and you end up with, you can bump into some time constraints that way. So it'd be really great if we could get some folks from this area trained as moderators to do some of the Braver Angels work here. So I think before we open it up to questions, we wanted to go through the handout. Is that what you'd like to do next?
Camera. So the folks at home can.
So
Not sure where that is.
it's on my,
Oh.
Yeah.
So if I stand here,
No,
will my
no.
back be to it? Oh,
It's-
stick it right there. Oh, got it.
I think, yeah, I got it, yeah. Okay. And I think we had just talked about that, right? Okay. Do you want to go over the handout before we go to questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Folks might have questions.
Sure, yeah. Okay.
So we put at the top there, the Braver Angels Way. I think that's often read and folks are reminded of that at the beginning of our workshops and debates. Always the intention is to keep the temperature down and keep minds open to hearing from others. So I made a list of, started with the idea of upcoming events there. So this afternoon, there's a debate in Two Harbors with the resolution says increased firearm regulations are necessary to stop gun violence. So there'll be folks speaking on either side of that resolution in Two Harbors this afternoon. If you go, put a note there if you wanted to register. You can go online and do that. I would suggest doing it right after church today. But yeah, so that's happening up in Two Harbors. And then I wanted to inform everybody about, immigration is such a hot issue now. And Braver Angels has this lovely Immigration 101 video on YouTube that does a wonderful job of helping you understand what the immigration policies are in the country as we speak. Which it's a complicated system. I'm willing to bet that there isn't anybody in this room that fully understands it. So I recommend that you go there, because how can we think about changing it if we don't even, fully understand what it is at this point? So I've got directions to help you do that. And then there's another video there where the leaders of the Citizens Commission on Immigration, which is an effort to get folks to engage in common ground workshops across the country on immigration, take the points of agreement and form a document that can be brought to the legislature to say, these are policies that people on both sides of the aisle agree on. This might inform your efforts to change the legislation, to create legislation to reform our immigration system. But it's also, when you have these common ground workshops, they explain how what they're trying to do is, before you even have the common ground workshop, get legislators, either state or national legislators, to agree to come and meet with the group after the workshop to hear about the common the points of agreement on policy, values, and this sort of thing. So to really try to push this ability to collaborate, hand it to the legislatures to communicate to them, this is what we want, folks, will you, so that, and then what didn't make it on there, because it's something I thought about after we created this document, was back in 2024, some of you may remember this, but Minnesota Public Radio teamed up with Braver Angels to address the rancor and so on that's going on. And they have a wonderful series of videos talking about that really help you get right into the meat of it, of the challenges of trying to talk across the aisle. What happens when you're provoked by somebody who's very defensive, or somebody that starts to use negative tropes to sort of fire you up? How do you respond to that? So in their videos, so I think there's something about a video to see it for real rather than just reading it on the page. So if you're interested in that, it would be, I don't know if any of you have a pen, but you would go to talkingsense.mprnews.org, and you can get yourself plugged into all of that. Yeah, and then there at the bottom, we just have a series of links to get connected locally and nationally. At the very bottom there, we let you know that on the first Monday of the month at 5:30, our planning group in our alliance that considers what events we might have the bandwidth to put on and so on, meet together. So we've got a sign-up sheet, right? We do. Over there. So if you get yourself onto that sign-up sheet, I'll be contacting you to let you know where that meeting is going to be. We've had to kind of move around some for those meetings on the first Monday of the month, but I will let you know when that meeting's happening and answer any questions you might have as well. So, thanks.
So before we open to questions, I just found these two quotes fairly compelling. These come from the Braver Angels website. One from Monica, who identifies as blue. I'm addicted to the nuance, the layered perspectives, the fresh ways into otherwise draining issues, and how even within my politically divided family, we're finding more and more to learn. And from Travis, who identifies as red, Braver Angels allows me to speak my mind without fear that my perspective will be mischaracterized or demonized. And I think that just those two quotes cut to the heart of why we do this. So let's stop the share. And we've got 15-ish minutes for questions.
I think before anything else, too, just a first round of applause. We're so grateful for you being here. Monitor the online, the chats, and if you have questions, I'll just come around here so we can hear each other and raise your hand, and I'll pass the mic. Yeah, please.
Imitation, one of the things I was taught how to approach it was to know ad hominem, no name calling, ethos, pathos, and logos. You have to have facts, you have to be credible, and you have to have emotion. But like you were mentioning in the beginning, it has to be controlled. It has to be understanding the other points of views. And you know, when I give speeches on this in class, I would say, I don't care what your opinions are, let's try to stick to this format. It's easier to talk to people. So that's, and you mentioned a lot of these things, but do you stress this in coaching people?
I think we do in our events, so I can speak to the debates, and I don't know if Mary would want to add anything for the workshops. I find the debates to be a really useful entry point into contentious issues. And again, it requires us to think differently about what a debate means, or what we think of as debate, because debates have become really contentious in and of themselves. But Braver Angels debates have a very clear structure and a lot of guardrails around how questions are addressed and to whom they're addressed and how long people are speaking, and are designed, they set up so that you are hearing from people who have differing opinions. And I think those structures really help create a space where people are willing and able to get up, share what they believe, and listen. So at the UMD debate back in the fall, there were students at the end who talked about the fact that they walked into that room knowing this is what I think about this issue. And they left saying, I never thought about it in that way. And now I'm not, and some of them left thinking, yep, this is what I think, but I understand other people's perspectives better. And other people left saying, I need to think about this more because I really got challenged.
I'd like to add one.
Yeah.
One of the things I think about when you say facts and focus on that, I think that's important. But I think one of the things that gets missed and contributes to the divide now is that people operate off different sets of facts, right? So how do you get beyond that? And I think that one of the calls that we can all relate to in a religious community is the importance of compassion for how people feel. And that's what I like about Braver Angels is they get down into people's values and concerns, fears, and we all know what it is to be afraid and to respect the fears that other people have. And whether, and sort of step away from arguing about, well, you shouldn't feel that way because your facts are wrong. Instead, just to move alongside somebody and care about the fact that they're afraid or concerned, and realize that I think sometimes we want to move people too quickly to where our position is, and to be more, I think this is all going to require a lot of patience, and that people are willing to move when they feel cared about, and how they feel and see the world is cared about and understood. So yeah, that's just a piece that I think is important that Braver Angels tries to nurture.
So, who else has questions? It was really well framed. Please.
One of our big protests that we had in Leyden Superior, this one, standing next to a gentleman, there's a man that's walking, cardboard thing saying Trump on it, walking past us. And then when the guy walked past again, the gentleman next to me said, boy, you're really brave. You're really brave to be walking past all all of these people. And he just stopped and talked to them, and he just, it's just wonderful to see.
Mhm.
So it was just something in action, you know, we all can do, but my response is like,
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes those folks, that is brave because they'll get shoved or, you know, hit or in some way physically assaulted for, you know, not being of the tribe that's gathered. Along that feelings, I had meant to share this story that was the eye opener for me. At our church, our book club, we were reading a book called I'm blanking on the name, but it was Sally, can you help me? It was the one about disability visibility.
Yeah.
Wasn't that it? Yeah. And one of the gals wrote in there about firearms. And, you know, I'm a fairly avid, you know, person on control of firearms, of legislation to regulate them. And this woman who lives alone and is handicapped, has a wheelchair, she pointed out in this article that she wrote for the book that I'm terribly frightened. I want a handgun. I like to sleep with a handgun next to my bed because if someone broke into my apartment, how would I protect myself? And I never, ever thought about that. And to me, it just really set me up to, boy, this whole idea of really listening to people and hearing about their fears can really change and shift your perspective. And it's not that we then shouldn't regulate firearms, but now every time I think about it, I think about that woman and I think, well, how do you manage, you know, create legislation that allows her to manage her fears and keep herself safe and protected? So anyway, enough on that. Any other questions?
One of the more important things is rationality and simply reasoning. And what I find so often in these larger discussions is a lack of recognition of the basic reasoning rather than the general overall principles. That's one of my observations.
So concerned, if I'm wanting to understand better, so you're saying that more reason, you know, it's hard to strike this balance between reasoning and, you know, sort of reactivity to a particular problem?
I think it's important to emphasize the basic reasons for why we're doing what we're doing, rather and rather than that happening, as often we end up emphasizing very general principles, which no one can disagree with.
Ah, uh-huh, and how they can, and so elaborating more on how those principles connect to the policy.
I think just that's right. That's right. Identifying those reasons and then how they connect to the policies.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Does some make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, another thing, when I hear you talk about rationality, and one of the other things that kind of triggers for me is how easy it is for us to slide into making judgments about who's being rational and who's irrational. It's that, like, you know, I think the people who agree with my position on something, that their facts are all reality based and rational, and that the other side is not. And one of the things that I appreciate again about Braver Angels approach is that there is an emphasis on entering into these interactions. And I think this is a big part of the structure for the one-on-one conversations that Mary had mentioned, is to bring curiosity in. And rather than entering into it, looking for the ways to prove that I'm right and that, like, you know, I'm the one who has, you know, holds the lion's share of rationality, to be curious. All right, how is it that you see it? What are the things that lead you to approach this issue in that way? What are your hopes? What are your fears? What are your values? And to stay open. And we still may leave not agreeing with the other person, but I think it removes a level of judgment that allows for more open and honest exchange.
I guess we can have Sally ask a question here.
Because she has the wrong idea. I have two things. The thing today on firearm policy, what time is that?
I am sorry that I did not put the time in there. Can we?
Let me
get mine
look.
and take-
Okay,
I'm gonna look
Yeah.
at it. Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, I think on there, you'll find the time. Thanks, Sally.
Okay.
Say.
And then, do you find that there are an equal number of people on both sides getting involved or more and more people involved? I tend to think that people who think more red would not be part of this, and that's, so I want you to disabuse me of that.
Yeah, you're right. And we don't focus in on that because we worry that it'll just contribute to more stereotypes. But I think that the red folks that we pull in tend to be of a moderate ilk. I mean, they're interested in cross-pollination, if you will, of ideas. I think that some of this is because when I've listened to, I've not attended a red blue workshop, I've observed them. And my understanding is that they feel pretty beat up in, conversations, and when they recognize that it's mostly blues, they're fairly intimidated. They get treated as if they're not as intelligent, well-informed, and who wants to subject themselves to that? And they just kind of feel like, I'm not going to be heard. From the start, I'm considered less intelligent, less capable of understanding the issue and coming up with ideas.
I can add to that. I'm part of Braver Angels with these ladies. And so the red blue workshops have to be balanced. So if you're signing up 8 people, 4 have to be red, 4 have to be blue. That's a separate thing. And those are a longer workshop scenario. We've invited individual reds to our alliance, and they have, because it does lean a little more blue. And many have said how welcome they feel. We get kind of excited when a red comes because we need more of them. And so, yeah, they do almost think it's like a secret thing to try to change you into being blue. And as soon as they get there, they're pleasantly surprised, and we continue to invite reds in and encourage them to bring their friends who are also red.
And I suspect that in areas that had a different demographic makeup or different kind of general culture, it might be different. So there are probably places where it's harder to get more blues to be involved. The debate this afternoon is from 3 to 4:30.
So that's it. But
Right.
Pardon me?
Harbor, thank you. Harbor Theater, 2 Harbors, 3 o'clock. And even though it's being held in 2 Harbors, it's open to anybody in the area. So anybody who's interested, please do go. Yeah.
Yeah, this may be a judgment, but one of the things that I have observed is that the Make America Great Again have really given Republicans a bad name. And I think there are more Republicans that are moderate than there are that aren't. And the fear that the Republicans in the Congress now have is really doing a lot of damage, because they're afraid if they speak up that Trump and his administration will, what they call it, primary them. And I really don't like this at all. I just want the Republicans and the Democrats to work together like I've seen in the past.
And I agree, and I actually think it's, again, both sides of the aisle that we have gotten to a place. I think people feel and are punished for stepping out of line with what the perceived party line is. And so I think it's easy to point to the Republican Party that way, but I also see that happening with Democrats, that if you say that you are willing to work across the aisle, that you also get slacked down.
That's happening to John Fetterman.
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah, well, people in the Congress are asking for him to the Democrats are asking for him to resign because he has a different point of view.
Yeah.
We are close to time, so what I'm just gonna do is remind everyone, this is such an enriching conversation. It is so clear, Heidi and Mary, that you've tapped into something that we are all thirsty for. Please sign up over here if you'd like to find out more about getting involved with the Alliance. I know that the event this afternoon is going to be great. I believe one of our good friends, Katya Gordon, is one of the facilitators of it up in Two Harbors. And I know I speak from all of us from the bottom of my heart so much we're grateful for your work and bridging the divide and creating a Bravery Angels presence here in northern Minnesota. So big round of applause.